Once again, thank you and welcome to another episode of Tea Talks. I am Jes'ka Washington, your host, and today it is my pleasure to introduce a Tea Talk where we're going to talk a little bit about special education and what we know about it from the U.S. side, and then how exactly it came over here in Dubai. If this is your first episode, we've been filming a series of episodes of being educators and what is that like internationally, and everything has been sponsored by Black Educators in Dubai, which we like to call Be in Dubai. Hey. So today I have panelists once again because I don't know everything, so I'm so gracious to have so much knowledge. And our first panelist is
Omolade.
Omolade,
Yeah.
And you're from
Brooklyn, New York.
Yes.
I've been teaching for 12 years. I worked in all fields of special education, from self-contained to ICT to STEPS. And before coming to Dubai, I was head of special education at Citizens of the World Charter School.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So that is just resume. Like,
That's been very cool.
and we also have
I'm Danielle. I was an SLD teacher for 5 years in the States,
Okay.
and now I'm the lead in the department here in Dubai.
yes, and I'm gonna say you're from which area in the States?
Orlando, Florida.
Orlando, Florida.
Yep,
Yes.
Disney World.
I was gonna say Luke. So let's just go ahead and before we actually talk about the technicals behind SIN and SPED, just what brought you out here?
I love to travel. I've been an avid traveler for, I would say, the past 5 years, a lot of it solo. And I just had this yearning to live overseas and experience what it was like working overseas and what schools are like out here. So first, before I came to Dubai, I was actually in China.
Wow.
I have a lot of questions for you.
Okay. No, ask away.
Mm-hmm.
And then after China, I came out here. Yeah.
I just got bored,
Okay.
and I'm not married, no kids, so I said I might as well do something to challenge myself, and I just came on a whim.
Awesome.
So let's go ahead and put some preface to this. And once again, pretty much season 1 is to help people who are interested, saying, hey, I don't know how to start with becoming an international educator, and I want to make this leap, but I don't know what I'm leaping into. So when we first start the conversation, if you're in education in America, you know what SPED is. That is one of the, the IEP process, all of these different things. And I will say, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, that SPED is pretty much regulated by the government as well.
Yeah.
And so there's expectations that must be met for every student that qualifies. And there's also a process in becoming qualified that teachers have to be able to do.
Right.
So we take all of that knowledge and then we come over here to a new world.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say what, as a SPED teacher, has helped you the most in the adjustments that had to come over here?
Well, I would say first is being patient, because you have to, after every school that I transitioned or moved into, you have to really learn their system. You have to learn the kids. You have to learn the routine. You have to learn the flow of the school. So having taught as long as I have and having moved through different schools, that constant transition and that constant period of adjustment, you have to be adaptable. So you have to have that spirit of, okay, I'm coming into this place. It's going to be new. How can I take what I know as well as what the school already has in place and make that work for me and make that work for the kids? So it's really just being adaptable. It's really having your toolbox, having all the tools that we've gleaned over the years of teaching, being adaptable, being able to go with the flow, but also bringing that knowledge, bringing what you already know to the table as well helps a great deal.
Agree with adaptable. One thing learning from the States and bringing it here that you should know is how to read through documents. What is supposed to be on a document, because coming into a new country that wants to adapt to different cultures and different curriculums, if you don't know what's supposed to be on a document or how to utilize the document, it can mess up the process. So being able to know how to utilize the document, giving it to the teachers, and teachers know what to use the documents for is beneficial.
Okay. So let me go back, because you even said the adaptation of what's trying to happen in the States and bringing it here. First and foremost, this is not called SPED here.
No.
It is SIN, is it correct? And that stands for?
golly.
I forget too.
It's not a direct acronym.
Okay.
It's like students of determination.
Yes.
I don't believe it's a direct acronym.
Okay.
Though.
They say SEN without the D, or they'll say SEN with the D. So
Right.
special education needs and disabilities.
Okay.
But they take off the D.
Okay.
And they just say SEN.
Okay. And so that, if someone was looking, I was going to say, if they're a SPED teacher, basically they're looking for a SEN position.
Correct.
That is the department. It's just called something different.
Yeah.
And so then we talked about just what you need to be able to bring in. What will be the real expectations of a person that's coming in for SEN? What were the expectations? I know we all have interviews and we're told one thing, and then you get there, you be like, this ain't what you said. So what does a person really have to say that you're going to need to be able to do?
All right. Well, all right. So special education in the States has had a longer process, right? Since the IDEA Act in the 1970s.
Mm-hmm.
So they've had, like you said, that governmental regulations for each state must adhere to a certain standard.
Mm-hmm.
Education here, particularly special education, compulsory education, is fairly new. Doesn't have the same background as education in the States. So SEN being even newer, right? So what are the regulations around that? It's something I'm still learning. What are the expectations? What are the mandates that have to be met? That's still something that is still very much evolving from my perspective. And there are no real cut and dried particulars around it. Danny mentioned IEP, for example. There is a form of an IEP that I was introduced to, which was vastly different from the one back in the States. So I actually you mentioned forms. I had to create a IEP for where I work, particularly, so that way it's uniform, so that way it's accessible for all teachers to understand, so that way they know what's expected to be on it. So you realize that with the absence of those regulations and those mandates, you do have to bring something forth to the table and say, hey, this is what works really well in the States, and this is why it worked well, and here's why I think will work well here. Forms especially. Making sure that teachers know how to read the forms and what's supposed to be on the forms, like you mentioned before, is a real earmark of special education and a real earmark of department, of the special education department. So, just making sure that we have that, things like that really help in getting information down and making sure that information is understood by everyone in the department.
So I'm going to ask you to repeat the question again, because I was listening to the
Well, I think that's a good piece. So let me pause and say that what you're saying is a person's going to have to be able to show proactivity.
Yes.
Proactivity, to be able to adapt the situation, that if something's in place, that you might have to be able to change it and to modify it to where it actually aligns a little bit better.
Right.
The other piece about that I want to say, and I don't think you noticed or knew that you said it, is there's a tact involved with if I'm going to come in and change processes or programs. It's not the best move to say all this stuff that you did was wrong. This is what we do in the U.S. This is what we're going to do today. It's more so saying, okay, there's a better way, and I like how you said it. There's a better way we can do this. We can align this process. So from you, I'm getting that if you're wanting to come out here, and it's not that you shouldn't come. It's just you're going to have to be proactive. Yeah. You're going to have to show some tact. So I'm going to say that you're also fairly new as well coming into this situation. So instead of saying what else did you need, what did you find yourself, or what character traits really were needed in order for you to run your program?
To say, just like she said, we have the IDA, and then you also have 504s. So you come into a country, like you said, there is no laws, there is no mandating, but it is a dual culture. And it's not only with Arabics, it's between the British. So they're a mixed culture of British and Arabics doing their educational system. Yes. So it's not that they don't have a system that they're following. They have a system that they're following, but they're wanting to implement more systems to make the culture more international. So coming into it, I have the American background, so I'm looking at IDEA, I'm looking at 504s, I'm looking at behavioral intervention plans, I'm looking at all of these documents, and then you go in and you pull in the KHDA framework, and the specific word it uses is same qualities. But what is the same quality? Is that a formal diagnosis? how am I supposed to just give a child an IEP just because they exhibit a behavioral issue and there's no diagnosis? Did you take the child to the pediatrician? Did you do this to the child? I'm not just going to slap a diagnosis on it, because then the whole country is going to be under an IEP. And then that's another thing that we found in regulations within the states. Because the child was bad, their parents went to the state government and put them on medication. So, let me just slap an IEP on it. So now the whole school's under Title I and free and reduced lunch. And now all the teachers got to do double the work for a child that maybe just needed to take a step back and then just have a meeting and a few little interventions put into place than a whole entire document. Because then it becomes a waste of trees. So for me, it was more of reading a little bit more and then doing, like she said, implementing things there to find out what really works. Sometimes it's fighting against the grain and sometimes fighting against cultural norms here to not have to slap an IEP on. Sometimes it's time. Just give the child some time to work out the kinks of a new environment. And then it'll work its way out. But then you can't beat someone over the head who has more experience than you, because I got 5 years, you got 20, so of course you know more than me, but then you've lived over here for 10 years. I've still been in the States. So a lot has changed and a lot more documents have been wasted because you think that's what someone needs.
So how have you grown in this past year of learning this, taking your background information and now having to make these adjustments? How have you grown in your, I would say, professional knowledge, because it doesn't always have to be your profession, but now that your knowledge in your base, how have you grown?
Well, I never wanted to be a leader. And then when you become a leader, it's kind of funny, but it taught me patience. It's like, it teaches me a lot of patience, not with students, with adults.
And I want to go back to that question 1 second, because when you said it taught you how to be a leader, and I think a couple of questions before you said in teaching the teachers. So let's jump into that real quick. Not only are you in the situation of understanding this program and you're learning, you're also having to guide other teachers and do all that as well. And I'm not sure, so you can tell me, are pullouts the same, or is the co-teaching the same? I just know from the classroom, for me in the States, our SPED lead would tell us what we had to do, we did it, we'd sign the document and we'd go. Does it work that way here, or is there a lot more of a learning curve and training that you have to be able to work with teachers through?
It depends on the manpower you have.
Okay.
If you have the manpower, yes. If you don't have the manpower, it might have to be adjusted.
Okay.
And it could be adjusted in you just going in there and doing it yourself with the teachers. Or you running around the school and you got to just be that person of one. But it all depends on what you have, and your actual leaders looking for you to do the job and just get it done when they're not there. So no excuses. If they ask, did you get it done? You better say yes. Then that's about as much as we got to it.
And so we talk about that, and is it regulated by KHDA?
There's certainly a framework, but it seems that each school decides how they would like to implement that particular framework. Making sure that we can identify students of determination, making sure that we're providing services to them. But from what I'm seeing, what it looks very, very different. For example, if a child, just going back to the States, I'm very much used to checks and balances. I'm very much used to framework. I'm very much used to just a regulated school and format, and just so that the expectations are laid clear, you know what to do, you know how to do it. And so here, because that particular department is evolving, and there's still a lot more to learn and to be done in that particular department, those checks and balances aren't necessarily there. So you come in and you have these expectations and you have your knowledge, and you realize that yes, you're going to have to lead a lot, right? You're going to have to be at the forefront and say, hey, what are you guys doing? Okay, that looks great. Here's how it can be better, like you mentioned before. You realize that there are a lot of great things happening in SPED here. There just needs to be a better framework around it. For example, I think you mentioned ICT earlier. I think the KHDA mentioned that teachers should look like both teachers are teaching. That requires training, that requires someone to observe, that requires feedback, that requires a feedback loop. So what am I doing well in the classroom, and what needs to be changed? I am not a fan of doing sped off the cuff, because there just needs to be, it's a practice, you know. It's something I've been doing for a while, and something that I'm very passionate about. So for it to be implemented well here, those particulars need to be in place. They just need to be in place. I think our leader mentioned that, so you're in the classroom, you just teach with the teacher, and it just should work like that, and it doesn't work like that. It needs training. It needs someone to watch how it's working. It needs data being collected, and I'm very much about that. So those pieces are not quite there yet. I think that if they're open, whether you have 20 years experience, whether you have 5 years experience, to having that, then we can really push the country forward in proper identification and proper practices, pushing forward the best practices for SPED.
I agree. You're right, not to do it off the cuff. I can say my boss, she took a leap on me because I've never been a lead in a department. I've been a teacher on the team. I don't mind taking roles, but I always played the back front. You're right, you can't just go in and teach, because chemistry has to work with both teachers. You have to agree on both things that you're teaching or how you teach it. And then you have to be able to know how to put on a mask for your students, because if you two don't get along, then the children will understand, and then the teaching will go off the wall. So I do agree with that. And the data analysis is a big thing, because how do you know if the child is growing if there's no data?
Absolutely.
And that's why I've learned differently when it comes to IEPs here, because I am a visual person, so I always want to know, well, what is data on the IEP supposed to look like? How do you pull out this standard and say this child needs to work on this standard, especially in a primary setting? The child hasn't even been introduced to foundations or standards yet to know, okay, I'm going to pick out sight words, or I'm going to pick out ABCs and 1, 2, 3s, and then I'm not a therapist, so I can't tell you if it's speech or if they need more than that. All I just know is, okay, well, these are usually what the common standards they work in this department, so I'm gonna put this standard on the IEP, and I'm gonna work my best way around it and see if they work around it and get to it. But a lot of times it is something you have to practice. I'm still trying to figure out where you find standards. But I do learn how to pull data from 1st to 5th, so I gotten stronger in that. Is working with the younger kids. That is where it gets a little bit trickier.
Yeah.
And I would say that I think at that point, and we've talked in other episodes, so I'm going to encourage you to definitely watch our episodes where we talk about KHDA and the rating systems, because it depends on where your school is at and where they're trying to go. If they're new, if they're rated weak, if they're rated good, if they were outstanding, I can tell you those processes are probably together and top notch, or acceptable. So each school is in their own growing pattern of trying to determine what they're going to be. And the one thing that's really good about conversations out here is that they know they have to grow SIP. They know that they have to do something, because that is the expectation from the country. So one thing that is a positive is that your department is not ignored. Your department is not taken for granted. But I will say, maybe there's a challenge of, just because we're not ignored, you still need to know how we
to do the job.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And being realistic to the fact that no, we're not ignored, but there's still only one diploma process. In the States, you have a special needs diploma. So you got to be realistic to a very low autistic child, or a child, very low Down syndrome child, who may not grasp those concepts no matter how many years they get past. So as the country is growing, they still have to be realistic to why those kids can still graduate high school, why they can still graduate college. Even now, the school I graduated from, UCF, had their first special needs graduation. So at the end of the day, no, we're not ignored, but also realistic expectations on these students have to be made with the country, because they're trying so hard to make sure these students are not ignored in the communities and in school.
And I'll say, I think one challenge I'm saying for me is that while you talked about the degree, was even the report cards. I'm not used to not having the word modified curriculum report card. And if it's not there, that means that you're ranked along with your other students. And because there's such a class ranking system, like even the kids in primary are sometimes ranked amongst ability. And because that. And so being able to have those conversations as well, which leads into a very, very unique situation. And that unique situation is if, and you could tell me once again, am I wrong? Because I am coming in like the outside second cousin. I'm the country cousin coming to visit the city cousins.
Okay.
So I can only talk about what I know from the country.
Okay.
And that piece is, if I was a person who was looking at SPED and to trying to come out here and be international, there is an opportunity to truly grow my career in that position and be part of conversations that help shape a country's view or how it should look.
Absolutely. I would say for someone who would like to come in, I would not say it's the best place for like a first year teacher. I would say
thanks.
that.
No, just learn when you get it.
Because you want to bring like your best practices over as a teacher, and I think that we really cut our teeth back home. We really went through the rigmarole. We really went through the difficult classrooms or administration, and you pulled out the best from that, to become a great educator, and that you can bring over here.
Yes.
But if you're just like brand spanking new out of college, or maybe a teacher role, yes. But for special education, it really requires like a lot of know-how, a lot of practice, a lot of trial and error, because you want to approach it in a way where you're implementing a practice, but you're also able to check on if what you're doing is working. You want to be able to pull data from that practice. You want to be able to analyze it with your colleagues, and you just want to have you just need that experience. I really, 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 really feel before coming over here to do special education specifically.
Well, I hit the ground running without all the years of experience.
But you did have years.
You did teach.
You did have
right.
something.
I did.
Yes.
I did.
Yes, I would say that's a plus.
And
that's a plus. I really think you.
And I'll say the one people that we haven't talked. We talked about the teachers. We talked about you. We talked about the schools. We haven't talked about the kids. And we haven't said. And I will say this: if it's new for the teachers, if it's new for the country, I'm not even sure if we've had a child who started primary in the SIN department and has graduated in the SIN department. That's how new this system is that the children who are being serviced are still learning it themselves, are still trying to understand, well, what am I supposed to get help with? What can I do?
The challenge I see here, particularly for, I do middle and high school, is one, over-identification. Two, really, schools not really being able to differentiate whether the child truly has a disability because of improper identification, and if it's a language barrier. There are students who are in high school who have a very rudimentary knowledge of English, and that's impairing their ability to acquire what's being taught in the classroom. But is it a disability, or is it that the child needs more practice in English?
Right.
And that line has not really been made clear.
And I want to go back on that part because I want to give context.
Yeah.
We have students in primary that are learning English, Arabic, and French at the same time. So when we talk about something that a child might have a disability in English, is the case that they have a disability or they haven't had enough practice?
Exactly.
So I'm sorry to cut you off on that. So.
Exactly. So because that has not been made clear, in terms of students, I definitely feel like I'm working with students who just need more intense English practice to be able to keep up with what's happening in the classroom. They do not present with having a disability. They do not present with having any cognitive impairments whatsoever. They just need more practice in English.
Okay.
Going through the degree process in SIN, just like you said, they're trying to learn 3 languages. And they're doing it because they said when a child is younger, they're going to grasp the concepts faster. But not all at the same time. So sitting there in the classes trying to catch the 3 languages, I'm confused. And I could say I'm a special needs teacher because I tell myself I'm as special as my students, because I am. Because I'm trying to catch what this word means, what this I mean. This slash might mean different from that slash. If you curve this line this way, it's a whole other word. So we all struggling. And then you may have a child who is native in the country and their parents speak Arabic, but their child does not get Arabic, and let's say they are autistic. Well, ma'am, it's a little harder to grasp the concept
Right.
when their brain functions a little bit slower.
Yeah.
So they may grasp French better.
Yes.
They click to French. And then once you get to Arabic, we all lost. Because in Arabic, it goes fast.
Yes.
There are some kids who need just 504s, right? They just need extra. They just need extra testing
Right.
time, and that's all they need. There are students who definitely do need IEPs, and with those IEPs, an intense type of intervention, whether it's speech language therapy, occupational therapy, counseling, and then there are students who really just could benefit from extra practice in English. And
But I like that you said it means they need therapy, but another thing coming overseas, in the States, when they get the documents, they will get, with their insurance, they get discounts provided for those services. Here may not be the same. Those services may be put at a price that may be out of the people's budget.
Wow.
So a lot of times when you have an IEP, things are missing. You can't just put, oh, this person needs speech or occupational on there. Are you willing to provide it? Because that's what happens now when you move overseas.
So I'm gonna have to break in and I'm gonna say, wow. Just first of all, there's so much information and we need more time. But we don't have it today.
Okay.
So for right now, I think you say just thank you for the little bit of tea that we have. And once again, I'm your host, Jes'ka Washington. We focused on sin and we focused on spit, but I can tell you right now, there's going to be more episodes coming. There was so much knowledge given, but we do have to go ahead and close out for today. So ladies, thank you so much for this tea time.